All right, so here we're going to do making the terrain scroll. And in this lesson, we're going to get introduced to a whole brand new idea, the idea of an object called an array. But before you do this, I made changes to the starter code. So if you happen to have already opened this stage up, but you're just beginning and you haven't gotten much progress done, please do go in history and reset the code to the starter code so that it's got starter code in there. Make sure you got that starter code because I did make some changes to the starter code. So please update that. Then go back to the previous stage, adding the terrain, get your ship, get your colors, so that the game will look like, well, your game. Okay? We're going to fix that thing with the obstacle tomorrow. Now, arrays. We're going to be using arrays in order to hold our scrolling terrain. Here's what it's going to look like here code-wise. We're going to have a upper terrain array, and it will be equal to a pair of square brackets. Now, that's something completely new. And we're going to have a lower terrain array, which is also going to be equal to a pair of square brackets. Arrays are like file cabinets. Let's look at a file cabinet. Okay. File cabinets, like this nice wooden one right here that I've got right here, it's an object that's got like containers. It's got drawers. Our array that we're going to make, it's going to have 40 drawers because each of these little rectangles that's made of our terrain, that our terrain is made out of, each of these rectangles is going to get stored inside of one of those drawers. Imagine a file cabinet that had 40 drawers in it and that you can individually address each of the drawers and take actions on the contents or get information about what's in the drawer. So arrays are very powerful. So we're going to be loading all of our terrain elements into an array. The upper terrain elements will go in the upper terrain array. The lower terrain elements, all the 40 rectangles that make the lower terrain, are going to go into the lower terrain array. Now let's go down to add. Oh, wait, nope, slow down. In the game function, we need to make sure we call the move terrain function because once things get going, that function, we want that function getting called because we're going to be able to see things happening before we're finished. All right, so make sure you got that call to move terrain in the game function. Now, down here in add terrain, we've got something else we got to do right here. Besides creating the upper terrain elements and putting them on the screen, we also need to put them in the upper terrain array. So here, upper terrain array in the ith location is going to be equal to that upper terrain element we're making right here. So this upper terrain element we're making and adding to the screen, we're also going to take that element and we're going to put it in the ith location of the upper terrain array. Remember, I goes from 0 to number of terrain elements, and that's at the moment 40 because our screen width is 400 pixels and our terrain width is 10 pixels. All right. Now, also want to do the same down here for the lower terrain. So my lower terrain array, again, in the ith location, is going to be equal to this lower terrain object we're making here. Now, at this point, we hit the run button. Everything still works. I can still die. Nothing is moving yet, and that's okay. But secretly, behind the scenes now, every single one of these rectangles has now been stored inside of an array, and we can now access those elements, and we can make them move. Here's how it's going to work. We are going to not be going from I equals 0 to 1. We're going to be going to the upper terrain array dot, and the Monaco editor wants to type it for me. I'm going to let it. More than one kid in every class misspelled this word. Why not just let the Monaco editor type it for you? Length. We're going to be going from I equals 0 to the length of the upper terrain array. That's how many elements got put inside of it, which at the moment actually is 40, and I snuck in a +2 up here, so 42 elements. That's to generate impossibility of overlap or a gap in the scroll. So we're going to get the ith terrain element. So we're going to have a local variable here called object. And this is a good time for me to make sure that I've got my notes, just so I make sure I do this right. And this object, we're going to get our hands on the upper terrain arrays ith location. So I'm going to borrow that. So we're going to get the ith element of the upper terrain array and store it in this local variable object. And then we're going to make it move using the negative speed variable for x and 0 for y. And just like that, your upper terrain is off to the races. But the thing is, it's not coming back around the other side. And something new, I can now fly off the top of the screen because there's no longer a terrain up there to get in the way like down there. So what we need to do is we need to handle scrolling. We need to handle, if the ith terrain element is scrolled completely off the screen, we need to then reset the ith terrain's position to scroll back onto the screen. So here we're looking at the object's x position, and we're looking to see if it's trying to be less than negative terrain width. And if it's trying to be less than the negative of the terrain width, then it's gone off screen. So we need to relocate it. We need to set its position back to the screen width. Did I do that right? Too many E's. Screen width for X and 0 for Y. And just like that, with that line of code right there, our terrain now scrolls seamlessly, scrolls beautifully. It looks very good as it's scrolling. All right, now let's get the bottom one moving. For the bottom one, we're going to be going from I equals 0 to the lower terrain array dot length. And just like we did before, I'm going to go steal some bit of code right here. There's the lower terrain array's ith element. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to make a var here called obj, and we're going to set it equal to that lower terrain array's ith element. We're going to go get that line of code because it's just going to work for free. And now our bottom array, our bottom terrain can move off screen. Of course, it doesn't roll, it doesn't scroll, but that's okay. To make it scroll, we're going to go copy the the object dot get x less than negative terrain width. Replace this true with that. And we're even going to go grab the object set position, and we're going to replace that. But if we don't change the y position, we're going to get a problem. As you could see, I didn't change the y position on the lower terrain, and the lower terrain, when it finished scrolling, it scrolled on top of the upper terrain. That's because we need to handle this y position. This is going to be at the screen height, but we're going to subtract from that the object dot get height. We're going to subtract from that the height of the object. And now both our upper and our lower terrains scroll. They scroll just like we want them to. Our ship can fly. It hits the terrain's top. It hits the terrain's bottom. It can run into the barrier. And that wraps up making the terrain scroll. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in class.